I found it entertaining. I found it inspiring. I found it healing. And I truly enjoyed this episode, and I want to thank everyone who created it.
I think Carol in this episode was fantastic. She's like I would be. Keep fighting and keep going.
What's up, guys? It's Mama Deadhead, and we're just gonna pretend that didn't happen. And Invincible just dropped 3 episodes on Amazon, and you guys need to go support Steven Yeun because he is perfection. That show, amazing. Go watch it.
Welcome back to another episode of Talk Dead to Me. I am your host, Johnny Odell. I'm the social media manager for The Walking Dead, and we are back. Sorry for taking last week off. We had some rescheduling issues with a guest. That's totally fine. It happens. We are back this week to talk about The Walking Dead Season 10, Episode 21. This is a sort of controversial episode, and usually I'm not down on the show in any way. I love the show. That's why I work here. That's why I cover it. I enjoy my job a lot. However, I thought this episode especially stood out as something that was just off. There was something different about it. The story didn't feel right. It just felt like this weird bottle episode. But, you know, other people have different thoughts, and that's totally fine, and I respect that. And a lot of people really enjoyed this episode, and I'm happy for them. So this is not a bashing The Walking Dead episode of Talk Dead to Me. This is just me giving my opinion. And so I don't feel crazy, I brought in Kirsten Acuna, good friend of the pod, to discuss her thoughts about this episode. Also, thank you to everyone who submitted their voicemails. I love putting them in the beginning of the episode. That's something I did in the early days of Talk Dead to Me, so I'm glad I could bring that back because I didn't want this podcast to feel one-sided. Anyway, let's get to Kirsten. She has a lot of amazing things to say. This is Kirsten Acuna. Kirsten Acuna, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast for this highly controversial episode.
Thanks for having me back, Johnny. I thought that we were going to be speaking about Here's Negan, but let's talk about this episode. There's a lot to discuss.
A lot to unpack. So Carol and Daryl split, diverged, if you will. Carol was trying to make a recipe for Jerry and chased around a mouse. Meanwhile, Daryl was fixing his motorcycle, and that is the entire episode. And obviously it's a bigger conversation about grief and how they deal with each other post their dramatic fight from 1018. But the menial task they had to do while they kind of dealt with their grief is what I had a problem with. How did you take the episode?
Well, this is so funny because I knew that you had strong feelings about this episode for a while. So I went in and then I started to see other people having early reactions. Just so you are aware, I thought I was going to watch this episode last Monday. That's when I usually get the episodes, since they're dropped early on Thursdays on AMC Plus right now. Usually, otherwise, we get the episodes on Wednesdays. And I went to go tune in like last Monday night, and then I was like, oh, I don't have the episode yet, but I saw that there were other reviewers that like clearly had the episode, and they were already saying like this is the worst episode of The Walking Dead that I've ever seen. And so I already had that like present in my mind, and I was a little concerned. I was very surprised when Tuesday, or maybe I wasn't as shocked when AMC then gave me the next 2 episodes of The Walking Dead, and I was like, oh, is this supposed to make me feel better if I don't like 1021? So I hate going in having any preconceived notions of an episode, but I don't want to steal your thunder on this, but I knew going in that this was probably going to be, if you're familiar with Breaking Bad's episode of The Fly, that's exactly how I felt about this episode. I knew right after I watched it, I was like, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. I don't really think you're going to be in between. And honestly, I didn't hate it as much as everyone else. I didn't love it by any like standards either, but I guess there were certain things in the episode, and we can talk about like because I love to play devil's advocate. We can talk a little bit about what I think the redeeming qualities of this episode are. But look, on the surface, the episode is a bit of a slog. Did it take me 2 times to finish watching the episode? It did. Is it a completely unnecessary bottle episode? If I was doing an entire rewatch of the series, like there's nothing that happens in this episode that I'm like, okay, I need to go back and I really need to see that. But for people who aren't familiar with Breaking Bad's Fly episode, quickly in that episode, Walt and Jesse are chasing down a fly for the majority of the episode. And if you're not familiar with why that episode was created, basically, the showrunner Vince Gilligan had said that they had run over their budget. It was a budget constraint, and that's why they wound up doing that episode. So when I saw this episode, I was like, oh, well, what does that mean? When I saw this episode where Carol was, chasing a rat around for half of the episode, I was like, well, this is interesting. But I feel like this was because of the pandemic constraints, unfortunately.
Sure. And I want everyone to know this is not going to be like a 1021 bashing podcast episode. And I have evolved my opinion on it since I initially saw it. Obviously, if I had known going in this was not going to be a good episode, I probably would have appreciated it a little bit more. And I still maintain that, the show did this kind of as a favor to us. Also, obviously, they need to make money, but it is kind of nice to have something, because otherwise we would have gone another 6, 7, 8 months without a new Walking Dead episode. And they had already done that last year. And AMC is probably like, please make something. So I'm glad we have something.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think a lot of these pandemic filmed episodes, at least The Walking Dead, they are about they're about mental health, right? And you mentioned the Paula episode. And I thought that this was, if I can just, expand briefly, like for me, if I wasn't on my own for like 9 months of the pandemic, I don't know if that episode would have like hit as hard for me, but I think that a lot of people have not had discussions about people who have been isolated and on their own during the pandemic for long periods of time, and maybe what that does to you mentally, emotionally, what have you. And I felt like I related to that a lot. And I have come at, I guess, watching these episodes from a little bit of a different perspective. And I think that was something that, I don't know, for at least 1021, when I go and play like devil's advocate for that episode a little bit, I saw it as to, when you have a fight with a best friend and conflict is left unresolved, like it can become an all-consuming stressor. And I did think, despite how personally I may have like felt about some of the episode, there was no denying that like Melissa McBride's performance in this episode, I thought was great, given that she had very little to work with. Like, I thought that you felt her internal struggle as she wanted to be able to fix something, even though she herself feels so very broken as a person. And I thought that it was relatable to people who have had some sort of disagreement with a friend in the past, and then you try to execute even the most mundane of tasks, Carol trying to like make soup, whatever, and then Daryl trying to fix his bike, and you can't do those things because your friend is in the back of your mind the entire time.
Right. I do want to ask, you mentioned earlier that some of the reviewers like yourself got the episode late, and that no cast interviews were really offered for it. So without, wrapping the tinfoil too tight around my head, like, is this kind of an admission secretly by AMC that they're like, look, we know this episode is very light and there's not a lot that goes on. So let's just kind of sweep it under the rug and couple it with Here's Negan, which, by the way, is a fantastic episode, probably one of the series' best. What was your take on that?
I mean, it definitely felt that way, right? It felt, I had asked for Melissa because it was mostly Melissa's like episode. I thought that it was interesting that like Norman wasn't even on Talking Dead. It was just, Norman and, or Melissa rather, and Cooper Andrews. It did raise some red flags, right? Because typically it's just, you watch the episode, you put in interview requests, and I can't even remember the last time that they've gotten back to me and they've said, I don't know if we're doing interviews this week. And I was like, what do you mean you're not doing interviews this week? Wow. And I will say, just like outside of that, like I knew EW was probably going to have Angela, and they did, but I think that's because they already had some preset deal where they just talked to Angela after every single episode. And I think the other thing that kind of just stuck out to me, and I mentioned this to you, was that if you go and watch AMC Plus, they have a little bonus featurette after every single episode. And Angela said this thing that stuck out to me, where she had said that the idea of Carol chasing the rat for this episode, it wasn't new. It was an idea that has come up in the writer's room before, where that storyline was attached to different people in different stories at various times. So that to me felt like AMC said, hey, we have a mandate for 6 bonus episodes. What are we going to do? And the writers were like, oh, well, we had this like previous idea that we just never brought to light. Maybe we can make that work in some way. And that kind of, when you think of the making of these episodes, as someone, as people who've been invested for a decade, that's kind of annoying, because you're like, you want to put your best foot forward. And if you're using material that you never thought was maybe like A game material, just give us 5 episodes instead of 6 episodes then.
Right. And I'm sure they did that so they could start early and lead right up to Fear, which we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, there's a storyline in the Walking Dead comics where they encounter a father and a son who are whisperers, who this is after Alpha and Beta are gone, and they're still kind of trying to maintain the culture, but the son's like, Dad, this is bullshit. What are we doing? I would have been fine with that episode. Let's introduce 2 whisperers. What's the fallout like for those who survived that?
That's a great, Johnny, that would have been, because these are all self-contained episodes, so that would have worked, right?
Yeah, I thought Cooper was great, and I would have loved an all Jerry episode. We only get to see bits and pieces of his family, of him, Nabila, and his kids.
Yeah.
So seeing something like that would be nice. And another pitch I have would be an all kids episode. Let's have Judith, RJ, and Herschel Jr. Can we call him Junior if he's like second removed? Anyway, I would have the 3 kids. Oh, and Gracie, sorry, the 4 kids. I would have them get into some kind of Goonies adventure where they have to like kill Walker together or something. And, Judith is looking after the younger ones. So that would be my pitch. But alas, who am I to say?
They could have had Dog go off with them. Well, you know what? I think I don't think that's a terrible idea, but I think also one of the reasons why we get so much of Dog in this episode is because you do start to really feel the pains of the pandemic somewhat, and the constraints. And, you mentioned how it would have been great to also see Rosita, and you don't know what was going on with maybe Christian's schedule. The only thing that I could also think of is, even if she wasn't filming something else necessarily, is AMC may have, or the cast crew may have asked, who is comfortable with traveling right now? Who is comfortable with filming right now?
Sure.
And even with the kids, maybe there could have been a comfortability factor there as well, right? Where maybe parents are like, I don't know if I feel safe with having, my kids down doing all of that sort of stuff. So I really just think it was probably like, okay, we got to just test this out, make sure, see who's available, who wants to do this, who's comfortable doing this. And, this is what we got.
Yeah. And sorry, one more button on that, them not kind of offering any cast interviews or anything. They always have a cast member take over their Instagram on Sundays.
Yeah,
and yesterday they had Dog take over the Instagram. So I was like, oh man.
No.
It's like everyone wants to forget that this episode happened. But I did want to mention, like if I haven't said it before, Melissa and Norman were great in this episode, as was Cooper and Dog, aka or 7. So I did like their performances. It was just the story that hampered this, just for everyone who is coming at me in my comments, and they are. All right, we have some reviews that we found on IMDb. And again, we're not trying to bash. There are some good, there are some bad, but I think this is going to end up being like a cult episode where people dress up as mice and they watch it together in the future. And this is going to be one of the things that carolers will always hold dear to their heart. So without further ado, let's do some reviews. I'm going to start off with one that's pretty mild. Disco Fly, which is funny because the Fly episode. This is basically a day in the life of 2 zombie apocalypse survivors. It's a great OVA content, but I think YouTube suits this episode more. And you know what? I couldn't agree more. This felt like one of those sort of mini series that they do, like Flight 462, or the other ones I can't remember right now that I should have researched. but this does seem
Red
like
Machete.
Thank you. Yes.
You're welcome.
It's very much of a
That's what I'm here
YouTube
for.
episode. I think that's what I was most shocked by. Oh, and one more thing I want to say. I'm sorry. I will never run out of things to say about this episode.
I know you won't. You wanted my play-by-play of this episode, so everyone just knows. And I think I gave you my play-by-play up until a certain point, and then I said, Johnny, I'm tired and I need to continue this in the morning. I'm falling asleep.
I think the most unforgivable thing for me is them using the walker music that they would use for like if someone was in danger or trapped by a walker and you weren't really sure if they were going to live or die. And they used that exact music, the Bear McCreary music, for her finding the mouse. And for me, that was a little bit unforgivable. If it was a zombie mouse, then fine. But the fact it was a regular mouse and they're using like the horror music, it's like, guys, this is not horror. And I got very upset about that.
I think the most frustrating thing was that the stakes weren't even high in moments of tension because Daryl struggles to fight off a walker at one point, but we know that he's really never in any danger if he's getting his own spin-off. I was like, what? I was like, come on, we're 10 years into the zombie apocalypse and or more, 10 plus years, and you're telling me that the man is he's still struggling with one walker.
Yeah, I agree. And the episode suffers, and all Carol and Daryl episodes will suffer going forward because we know that they have a spin-off together. We know they make it. We know they survive. Yes. We know if they're having a spin-off together and they're riding off to New Mexico or wherever they go, we know that it's probably on good terms. So any tension they have now, although it's good to like see the journey, you're kind of like, all right, well, they're going to make up. So who cares? Like if we didn't have that information, I feel like the episode would have been a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, even still, when Daryl's going up against one walker, I'm like, we're not killing off the main character of the show now. So
yeah, why are we spending like 7 minutes on this? All right, give me a review that you found on IMDb.
Yeah, so you had asked me, just for context, to look at some of the people who were reverse review bombing this episode. Which
for those who don't know, people are giving it 10 out of 10s because they're afraid that people like us or reviewers will give it bad reviews. And I think as it stands now, it has like a 4.6 out of 10, which I'm sorry to say is the worst reviewed episode of the series. And that is critics.
I will say though, do you think it is the worst episode of the series? No. I was looking at what some of the worst reviewed episodes, I promise you I'm going to read a bad review, but I was looking at what the worst reviewed episodes of the series are, and a lot of them are season 8, unsurprisingly to me. But also I think Swear is like one of the top poorly reviewed episodes.
I don't understand why everyone hates that episode. This was the introduction of Oceanside. I mean, that was at least interesting. And Tara's like running from everybody and Heath goes missing. I mean,
right, there's a lot going on in that episode.
This is not the worst episode. I don't know what's wrong with people.
Yeah, but a lot of season 8 people are immensely upset with. I think Wrath isn't even one that I would necessarily.
Is that the Carl Death one?
It's the season 8 premiere.
Oh, okay. No. 809, whatever 809 is, where Carl dies.
Right.
I would say that's probably one of the worst episodes for me, just because it was so drawn out and the whole episode was just dedicated. I mean, yeah, some of the Alexandrians were trying to flee Negan, and that's exciting, I guess, but just dragging Carl's death out as long as possible. I mean, he deserves a good death, but it was just overkill for me. My version of worst is I don't want to watch this episode ever again, and that is one of them. So I don't know if it's the worst episode, but it's definitely one of those do not want to watch.
Right. I feel that way usually about when I'm doing a rewatch. I feel that way about like the second half of season 5. I don't know. I just feel like it gets a little slower. Anyway, so to get back to a review that I found. Well, I found one that was a 1 out of 10 that I really like. But do you want me to read a 10 out of 10? Because I have some 1 out of 10s that I had starred.
Read whatever you think is the most interesting.
All right, so a 1 out of 10. This episode, this is from Ronnie Hayes, and I marked that one because I recognize the name. This episode is absolutely pointless. Most of these bonus episodes are. This one, I assume because of Daryl and Carol, he wrote crazy fans. I don't like calling people crazy fans, but he said this one is being review bombed with 10 out of 10 scores that everyone with a brain knows is simply not even close. And still, Even with the pathetic attempt to lift the score, its rating as one of the lowest episodes. Why? Because it sucked. Period. These episodes are made simply to start bringing revenue into AMC without much care at all for the world building, characters, and true heart of a zombie genre epic. Restrictions and budget hurt creativity a lot, so I understand the creative struggle. However, that is not an excuse to waste our time. And I highlighted that one because of what Ronnie had said at the tail end about AMC and revenue. And that was what another one of the reviews that I had highlighted had said. This one is from, oh gosh, I don't know if this is supposed to say Beard Al Noir. I don't know some of these usernames.
Sounds fancy.
But this is another 1 out of 10 that just says like, Dear AMC execs looking for answers. And this one's way too long to read the entire thing, but they basically just say, without hyperbole, this is the single worst episode in the series. I understand it is a bonus episode, quote unquote, done during a hectic and disjointing pandemic. But if this is the bonus, then y'all should have just kept cast and crew home safe and avoided the risk. And we, the audience, would have been grateful.
I appreciate that people are acknowledging that it's tough times and shooting in a pandemic is not easy. But, This Is Us has been trying to do its best in a pandemic, and they've had to do a few hiatuses because they'll have a COVID case and they'll delay production for 2 weeks. And some of the episodes just take place in a car or Randall's house or something. But the story and the dialogue is still good and it pushes it forward. And you're like, wow, how did they have this happen? So it's funny because 1 out of 10 reviews you expect to be in all caps, like this is shit, blah, blah, blah. But I'm glad that people are reasonably like, guys, I love the show, but that is.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a reasonable, I tried to find ones that weren't just, all caps screaming. Like I thought that those had some reasonable points. I love that you brought up This Is Us because I actually caught up with 4 episodes of it recently back to back, and you're right, I've been thinking about, I've also been watching like episodes of Grey's Anatomy that have been filmed during the pandemic because I am interested in like what do other pandemic filmed episodes look like? Are they as contained as The Walking Dead? Are they able to succeed with ensemble casts? And I gotta say, like with This Is Us, I don't feel like I'm watching a pandemic filmed episode, even if they are in the car.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like this was always planned. Like they're like, okay,
Right.
We'll get to season 4 and then we'll have the pandemic episodes. I have 2 more reviews. Vader Boy says dog gets a 10, the rest gets a 4.
I mean, if anything, if people were asking for dog for all of season 10, and I think this episode made up for any lack of dog that you didn't have before. Because I think for a while we were like, is dog alive? Where is dog?
Okay, so like I said, zooming out for this episode, it is a very lighthearted story about grief, but I'm wondering, the Carolers, Caryl, the people who ship Daryl and Carol together, if this had been an episode with Daryl and Connie, the Carolers, I think, would have hated this episode and they would have negatively review bombed it. And similarly, if this episode did not involve a ship, and obviously people say the whole episode would fall apart if it wasn't these 2 characters dealing with grief, fair point. But if this was, say, Rosita and Jerry or something, or Rosita and Father Gabriel, maybe a lighter ship that people aren't as upset about, and they were just doing the same things, making a recipe, finding a mouse, fixing a motorcycle, people would have hated this episode. But because it involves Caryl, Carol, people have to defend it with all their hearts. They have to die on this hill.
It's so hard. It's so hard to do these what ifs, right? Because
I know.
First off, I don't even think if we had a Rosita Father Gabe episode, Father Gabe's going through some motions right now, so I don't think he would have been at Alexandria anyway. But if we had like a Rosita Jerry episode, I think you would have like more of this 3 men and a baby thing going on. Just like a comedy sort of situation. I don't know. If it was Daryl and Connie, sure. That's one thing that upsets me because I know that Lauren Ridloff, we've talked about this before, she just wasn't apparently available to do.
She's a busy lady.
Yeah, she's been doing a lot. So I do wonder that. Do you wonder that? Like if she was available, do you think she would have maybe have had this episode? I don't know. It's tough
I don't
to
know.
say.
I mean, I think they did want to not do these bonus episodes and leave Daryl and Carol in such a negative spot. I
Right.
will defend one part of the episode. I did like the ending when Daryl returns and him and Carol kind of have that moment. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that they keep doing these sort of teasery moments between them. And, we all know that Angela's very aware about the shipping drama. And so I don't
I
think
mean,
I don't think Angela intends
mhm.
to troll anyone. And she said that to you, hasn't she? In like
No,
the
yeah,
past?
yeah. We talked about this when there was the introduction of Leah, and she there was the first thing that she said to me. She was like, "Oh gosh, no, I would never do anything to like troll the fans." And because I was like, "What's going on here? Like, we're just
Right.
introducing some love interest out of nowhere." I will say this because I was thinking about how this just feels like such a bottle episode, and I want to say, like, I know that Angela isn't a fan of like bottle episodes. You got to think back to like the first episode she took over as showrunner. She killed off Gregory, like boom, right out of the gates. And then we got that Dante twist. Poor Tom Payne wanted to leave by then because he wasn't utilized in a great way before Kane took over. But then he got, I think, a very cool death introducing the Whisperers. And then we received the giant beheading of multiple characters on 9/15 instead of in the season 9 finale. And I remember when I asked Angela, I think it was I had asked Angela why they made that choice, and she was just like, I just felt like we were there, like we would have been treading water, and she didn't want to do a bottle episode. And I love that attitude. So it has to be a little frustrating to be doing more contained episodes, but like, what else can you do right now?
Right.
During the pandemic. So that's something that has been in the back of my mind while these episodes have been coming out.
And I will say, proving my point a little bit about how Carolers would have reacted if these were two separate characters, or if you just replaced Carol with Connie. They hated the episode. They hated 1018 with Leah. And I thought that was a far more interesting episode because we've never seen Daryl in this light, whether you agree with it or not. I thought it made sense for his character in that time, being in isolation for years, and also biding his time. He didn't like jump into a relationship. Like they were kind of going on and off for like, what, 9 months or something.
And that's why Angela had said, like, I didn't want it to feel like I was trolling the fan. Like, I believe that is why we have all of those time jumps, because you see that he didn't jump into it right away. This was over a period of, I think it was 17 months that he and Leah knew each other. And like, he didn't even know her name for like quite some time.
Yeah, probably just called her Fish Lady. But that's where we meet Dog. That's where we get this, Daryl has been biting his tongue like all of season 10 with Carol because she keeps fucking up so badly, like endangering all of their friends constantly for these selfish needs, and she's having mental breakdowns, but he bites his tongue through all of it because she is his best friend in the entire world. And this was the episode where he finally was like, fuck it, I'm letting it out.
Well, you know what, and I think that whole Daryl lashing out at Carol at the end of 1018, I think that's also that goes to like, that's just what you do if you really care about some friend and you're holding everything in. It was just a reality check, right? For Carol. It was like, look, I've been holding all of this in, as you said, and finally him just going like, I got to just tell you how it is, because it seems like you're not getting it right now.
You're not,
and let me get this off my chest, because if I keep letting all of these things build up, who knows what he would have done.
Right. And I like seeing Daryl actually spread his wings, no pun intended, because he has wings on his vest. And he's been there for her. And she knows that she's been fucking up. Like, you can tell after the cave collapsed, like, she just completely breaks down. Like, she almost wants him to, like, punish her somehow, or, like, tell her to go away or to stop being friends. Like, she was fully ready to be like, and she keeps doing this throughout the season, throughout the series. We see her, like, when during the whole Negan story arc, she just sat that out because she's just been like, she just feels so guilty, and she keeps trying to like leave, and then she comes back. So it's just been overwrought with so many things. But I mean, I guess I'm glad they're fine going into into season 11.
I mean, are they fine? I don't think that there was really a resolution that was made. No one apologized at the end of the episode. They were just like, they kind of just went like, okay,
all right,
we're just going to carry on. Words are still unspoken.
Do you have anything else on 1021 before we go to some quick news?
There were some people, I think, who were saying, it was just kind of nice to have a break and just see like, oh, what's going on just in Alexandria. And I was like, is it? I was like, I wouldn't want to watch 5 more episodes of this. Like, let's get to what's going on with the, you know what I would have loved to see? Because you gave your example of what you would have loved to see in some of these other bonus episodes. I would have loved to see, I wish that they had cast Mercer earlier, and I would have loved to see a Commonwealth centric episode. Give us some backstory on like 2 of the people over there.
I mean, that's kind of what 1020 was a little bit. I mean, we got to actually hear the soldiers speak. I know. I'm still a massive fan of the show. 1022, Here's Negan is fantastic. And I am excited for season 11. So this is not me being down on the show. I love Game of Thrones, and there are terrible episodes of Game of Thrones. I love The Office. There are some really cringy, awful, unfunny episodes of The Office. The Halloween episode of WandaVision was just okay for me. That's okay. You can love a show and still think some of its episodes are boring. How I Met Your Mother, one of the best sitcoms. Its ending, awful, unforgivable. So I'm just saying, it's okay if there are some bad episodes.
Yeah, I don't think that's a controversial take on How I Met Your Mother. I think most people felt that way.
Oh yeah, that's pretty, that's like saying the sky is blue. Yeah, everyone agrees. Okay, so some quick news. AMC Plus, which has kind of been an enemy a little bit because it basically segregates the fandom into 2 factions, the people who have seen it, the people who have not seen it. And then there's just spoilers out there, and more times than not, the people who have not seen it get spoiled. And this is about to happen for Fear, which I can't say anything, but when it comes back, it will have a pretty big episode that is full of spoilery things. And that info is going to be out there a week early from its premiere. And I am very worried about that. What do you think?
Well, here's what I'm going to say. I'm glad that it's Fear and not The Walking Dead. But also, we talked about this for those who are listening, and we talked about this a bit, and AMC Plus and how it kind of affects our jobs. And for people who aren't aware, I still have to, even though these episodes air early on Thursdays, I'm not supposed to discuss them until Sunday evening after the episode airs, East Coast time, after the 10 p.m. hour. And it makes it weird because, like, what if Brandon Davis, he made this point where he was like, well, what if I just didn't watch the screeners and I decided to just like watch on Thursday on AMC Plus? Can I talk about the spoilers then? And I was like, fantastic point. And I think it makes it tough for coverage. Yeah, you're right, because the spoilers are out there. And I think what I'm hoping is that if they do this with Fear, but I really hope that they don't do this with the final season of The Walking Dead. Like, I would hate if the finale, the series finale of The Walking Dead is made available to people days earlier before we can all enjoy it together.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad. It's ruining appointment television. At this point, you might as well just release the season like Netflix does.
Well, you know what I think is interesting? I had someone ask me recently, oh, well, what are the ratings like for the show? How many people are like still watching week to week? And I looked at them and I said, I don't even know that it matters, because you have this breakdown now of where people are tuning in on Thursdays. And then they're probably, I haven't seen any data on this. I don't know if you have any info on this, but like people are probably pirating it. They're probably like uploading it online on Thursdays, Fridays. And 100%. Then everyone who wants to access it probably is accessing it before the live show on Sunday. So I don't even know that ratings even matter at this point anymore.
It's going to be a weird summer. We're going to be out of COVID and everyone's going to be out, which is going to make for a weird time to put out The Walking Dead, which is traditionally an October premiere show. It's going to be, what do you think about The Walking Dead final season beginning in the summer?
I don't love it because, and I know that we talked about this a little bit before. I mean, we're used to having like the whole little Walking Dead family always having a premiere at New York Comic Con in October. It's nice to like be around the cast and crew and kind of like sharing that together. And we're obviously not going to be able to do that. To kick off like the final season, like that stinks. That stinks a lot. And I'm not a huge fan of that. I was wondering if maybe when we get to, because I think that it hasn't been announced yet. I have to imagine that they're going to split this into 3 parts.
They have
to get as much juice out of it as possible. But if the second part starts airing, let's just say in the fall or whatever, maybe it doesn't. I'm just thinking off the top of my head right now. But San Diego Comic-Con had announced that they're going to do this special Comic-Con event over Thanksgiving. I'm not a fan of it. We don't even know if it's going to be safe to gather together any sorts of groups of people then, but also like a lot of people have pointed this out. I have a lot of feelings over this, none of which are like too positive. I just don't know I don't know what necessitates doing this other than money and being hungry for money, right? So
but controls everything.
Well, I think when you look at also, Better Call Saul has just been put off because they probably were like, what can we film? What shows can we film right now? And they were probably just like, we can't do the final season of that. We can't do the final season of Killing Eve. And I think, Walking Dead just unfortunately, they plucked the baby straw right out of the bunch, and they got to be the test subject.
And they still are. I mean, they're filming season 11 now.
I know,
it's crazy.
So it makes me wonder, like, how are the first episodes of season 11? Are they going to feel, more contained as well? I don't know, but yeah, I wish that we were having a bit more of a break, just because I'm not, and you're not used to this. I'm not used to going straight from Walking Dead into Fear and then maybe right back into Walking Dead. Like usually there's a break in there, and I think, it makes our lives a little more hectic.
Yes, but last year it was all hiatus all the time, and I had to really get creative for content, so I don't miss those days. But yeah, there would be a nice in between. I'm guessing it'll be Fear till June. Maybe they'll take a break, and then Walking Dead, I would probably say late July or August, and then World Beyond will probably second and last season will take Walking Dead's old spot maybe in October. I would guess season 11, the first part leads right into that. Then I would say 11B would probably be February. And then you can start season 7 of Fear around the same time in April or May. And then you have that last part either late summer next year or late October, just so you can fill out all of 2022 with Walking Dead. But it's a lot.
I think that sounds like a pretty, not that I'm someone who schedules things at AMC, but that sounds, like a solid schedule to me. I would just say, why would you not make the final 8-episode premiere at New York Comic Con 2022?
I think they might.
What I would hope, right?
If I were them, I would do that for New York Comic Con. Have the premiere there. That goes until early December. Finishes early December. And then Carol and Daryl's show, which is 2023, I would imagine that premieres in the spring, because you would want those two shows to be as close together as possible so people don't lose interest, because people are going to feel a sense of closure with Walking Dead after that show. I mean, I'm sure the last scene or an after credit scene will be Daryl and Carol. It's like, hey, how about that New Mexico thing? And then, end of series. That would be my guess. I have no idea.
I was going to say maybe by then we finally have some agenda for this Walking Dead movie, right? Maybe.
Well, the movie I heard was supposed to be starting to film this spring, and it's about to be spring. Spring is almost sprung, so maybe
it's a 2023.
Bring this movie into action. Definitely 2023, 100%. Yeah. So next year you could have 2 parts of The Walking Dead, Fear season 7, and a Rick Grimes movie. Okay. So next, have you seen Here's Negan yet?
Yeah, I watched it. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I probably can't say too much about it, so I'll just say like it does some timey-wimey stuff that I wasn't a huge fan of. But overall, I think I enjoyed it more than the graphic novel.
Wow. Well, it fills it out a lot more without giving too much away.
Right, and that's what I really liked.
But this episode and 1018 are very, very guilty of doing these incremental time jumps, and there's 4 or 5 or 6 of them throughout the episode, and I will say it's a little jarring.
I feel like I have to have a whiteboard behind me where I'm like trying to keep track of like, where are we right now in the like Walking Dead timeline? And I think that that's a little frustrating for viewers. Like no one wants to have to like do work while they're watching an episode. And
Yes.
So that's a little odd, but I thought it's just, I think people are really, really gonna like it. I don't know if like people who, there are people who, you know, haven't been on board with Negan for a long time. So like, you're probably not going to change the minds there, but for anyone, I think that if you are a comic devotee, I think they did a great adaptation of it.
Yeah, and Hillary Burton shines. If you guys are wondering, oh, they cast his wife. Well, she's an amazing actor in her own right, and she absolutely nails Lucille, who we only got a glimmer of in the original Here's Negan comic, which is a standalone you can buy on Skybound.com. Thank you. Everyone go buy that.
Have to get it in there.
You really do. You really do. But would you say it's the best one of the 6?
Oh, absolutely. If I had to
rank them, please.
Oh, I don't know. I haven't done my whole like ranking in my head yet, but I would say that the premiere and 1022 are the best episodes out of all the bonus episodes. I would say 1022 is the best. And then maybe 1017 is the second best. And then, gosh.
Let's just do it. Let's do it.
Hold on. I got to think of what happens in every episode.
Okay. I would say, like I said, I really like 1018 for how different it was. So that would be, my third best.
That's fine to me.
I would say
I don't know.
1019 and 1020 are so different from each other. I'd put them right next to each other. I'm gonna give the edge to 1019 because I thought Robert Patrick was awesome.
Yes, yes.
Then I would say 1020. No offense to anyone in that episode. It was a great performances all around. And then a mile down from that is 1021.
Right now I have them listed as 1022, 1017, 1019, 1020, 1018, and then 1021.
Wow, 1018 second to last. You're gonna make a lot of fans happy with that. That's great. Now I'm the enemy.
I just want them to attack you on Twitter. No, I'm kidding.
They already are. It's great.
I'm just gonna send them out. No, I'll just briefly say the reason why I put 1018 so far near the end is just because I was like, do we need to introduce another character this late into the game on The Walking Dead? You literally could have gone this entire show without introducing some sort of love interest for Daryl. And I think that character just means so much to so many people in terms of like, you know, there are always people who want him to be in a ship, but then there were a lot of people who read the character as asexual and they were sending Norman Reedus fan mail. And he had told me, he was like, I've read my character as asexual sometimes, and he was like, I'm not saying that he is asexual, but like, you know, I just felt like that was kind of a knock to a lot of people then, where it was like, nah, we're just gonna go the traditional route and whatever. And I was like, well, that's a little disappointing. You know?
Yeah, you know, I totally understand that criticism, but I've always, and if he is asexual, great, and I understand why people would be upset about that. But if he's not, then this episode made a lot more sense. And I always thought it was weird that he had never had a real relationship in the 10 years plus that he's been on the show. So I don't know. I was fine with it. And I have a feeling that Lynn Collins, we haven't seen the last of her. I think she'll show up in season 11. Otherwise, they would have just killed her.
Did you notice that they had said on Talking Dead last night that they did confirm that like she has some sort of military background? So I am wondering if they are going to tie her in with the Commonwealth, or if they're going to tie her in with or maybe tie her in with the CRM.
I mean, it's possible. Who knows? A lot of fun Walking Dead stuff ahead. Kirsten, thank you so much for coming on and discussing your thoughts on this. Don't be too mean to us on Twitter, or you can be mean to me. Don't be mean to Kirsten. She's awesome. So
thanks, Johnny.
You're welcome. I got your back. All right. Well, always fun to talk to you, and we'll talk later.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I wish that we were talking more about Here's Negan, but I am excited for people to really see that and where that's going. And if anyone is interested, I will be speaking with Angela Kang about the finale episode. So little teaser for what's ahead to come on Sunday.
Little shoulder shimmy along with it. I love it. Make sure to read Kirsten Acuna and follow her on all the Instagrams and Twitters of the world. Talk to you later.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, and that was my interview with Kirsten Acuna. Guys, what did you think about this week's Walking Dead? make sure to reply and tell us on the Walking Dead social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We are there all the time. I should be making more content on TikTok. I just only have so much time. Anyway, next week, hopefully we will have Ross Marquand. I can't wait. Here's Negan is coming up. Invincible is on Amazon Prime Video. Go watch that if you haven't already. And anyway, I hope you guys stay safe. We are almost out of this. Wear a mask if you can. Get vaccinated if you can. And as always, happy birthday to Nate.